Each of you is a business owner or works closely with specific business communities. How are government regulations and policies specifically affecting business and in turn the economy? And what is the role of government in this area? And I'll ask Molly to start.
If the current president or the next presidential candidate and Congress don't step in and stop the extra taxes that are going to come on all of us from allowing Bush's tax cuts to expire, as well as adding on to those the extra health care taxes. We're going to see $500 billion of new taxes on 1/1, another $500 billion over 10 years. So, you know, people are waiting. They're stopping. I don't know if you read in the Denver Post last week, there were some results from a business roundtable. They sat with 200 of the top CEOs of the largest U.S. corporations and asked them how do they feel about policies right now and how are their companies maneuvering through it. And some statistics to share with you. Really, the majority said that they're worried about the fiscal cliff, obviously, of 1/1, so they're not making any moves. 69% said that it was President Barack Obama's policies that have hurt their businesses. 67% said there's way too much uncertainty to grow, to expand, or to hire, or to do any new manufacturing or purchasing of products. And 55% said they would not have started their business today, having known what they know now. Wow. So to think about, those are the largest CEOs, the largest corporations that employ so many of us. They would not be in business right now. They would not take the chance again. They wouldn't take the risk. We need entrepreneurs that do take risks, that bootstrap themselves from their own salaries, their own savings, their own incomes to create jobs. And that's who does it. The government doesn't create any jobs. They don't create any wealth. So, you know, the middle class has lost 33% of their net worth since the new administration took office. And so I tell you that 100% of women are hurting right now in this economy. And business owners are hurting, and future business owners are stalling and stopping. So again, I say we want the government to get out of the way so that we can create jobs and get the machine, which is America, running again. Because we don't want a handout. We didn't come here for a handout. We'll do it ourselves. We're very proud people, you know. We just need them to get out of the way.
On state level, too many governmental decisions have been transferred to the executive branch. So if you go back to the founding fathers and the 3 branches of government, which I know it's tricky to do at this time of day, so stay away from but the fact is, what has happened is the accountability for some of these decisions, both the laws and the regulations, have now been embedded in bureaucracies. Instead of being your elected officials who you can decide to move out of office when they're not responsive, when they're not helping the economy, they're not helping job creation, many of the decisions are now embedded in bureaucracies where you can't find the person who decided to put that regulation in place. You can't find that person who can get rid of the person who put that regulation in place. So that is a very big challenge, and under this current administration, the use of executive orders and many things, many big things that have been put into place are done in the executive branch, not in the legislative branch. It makes it very difficult. It is hard for me to hear on this panel, out in my district, and to know it in my heart from watching my husband's construction business, thinking of my clients, my former clients in their small businesses, knowing how difficult it is to fix something that even seems minor, and you're trying to get to the root source of it. It is very difficult to do that. So we need to get back to a place where we're respecting the 3 branches of government. We're being accountable and transparent in those things. So I think that is something that we can concretely do. The other thing I want to just mention, because again, as a legislator, I've had to experience this, is unfunded mandates. Things that sound so good that no politician will pass on. Of course we'll support this. We'll pass this bill that requires X, Y, or Z, whether it's at the national or state level, but oh, we're not going to pay for it. We'll tell you you have to do it, but we're not going to give you the resources to do it. That happens time and again. That is another problem that those of us in elected office should be held accountable for, to identify those things, and I can tell you people on the street can identify them for us. So when people say, well, where do you begin? You begin by listening to the people most impacted, and it is the business owners. It is the people who are saying, I'm no longer going to try and run this business, it's too difficult, or I'm not going to hire that employee, or I'm not going to have the new roof on my business because I just can't afford to do it. So we know what path we need to go down. It will be difficult, and there will be people who are unhappy. When you make change, when you take away goodies, that is difficult. But I do think we have some priority setting to do, and I think it's critically important we start on that now.
Okay, you're talking to somebody in the most heavily regulated field on the planet, medicine. It's unbelievable, and already, let's just say every time there's a government regulation in healthcare, we have to, and in any business, we all have to pay for somebody to make sure that well, in the first place, we have to pay somebody to tell us what it means. Then we have to pay somebody to make sure that we put everything in place so that we can comply with the regulation. Then we have to pay somebody to make sure that we are complying with the regulation. Then we have to pay somebody when the government says, oh no, we're not going to pay you for doing that ultrasound after all because you didn't put a period at the end of your meaningful use sentence. Do you think I'm kidding? I'm not kidding. We have to put a period at the end of a sentence. If it's not there, we don't get paid. This is government regulation, folks. I mean, we're not talking about, life-threatening situations. We're talking about piddly stuff. Okay? So, and just as Ellen said, you can't find anybody in government that will explain to you exactly what that regulation means and how exactly you're supposed to comply with it. We've talked to Medicare saying, can we use this code to charge for this, and will we get paid for that? I don't really know. Go ahead and give it a try. Oh, really? And if I don't do it right, then I'm committing Medicare fraud. Really? So, I mean, government regulation is absolutely insane. If you talk, and I've talked to a bunch of docs around the country, between 5 and 40% of their overhead costs in their practices is just in complying with government regulations and rules and the coding system. They never take any away, let's face it. They just keep adding. And then when you keep adding, then all of a sudden you get contradictions. And try and find somebody that can figure that out for you. It's insane. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say that these regulatory agencies set up through the executive branch, these weren't even planned by our founding fathers to begin with. Okay? There's nothing in the Constitution about that. These people are making rules and regulations that have the force of law. Essentially, we have how many hundreds or thousands of government bureaucrats that are actually essentially passing legislation without our approval, without our consent, as we the people. How have we let this happen?
Yeah, exactly.
It's really time to wake up and turn this thing around. And it ain't going to happen with this administration.
Right. Do to us as business owners and to the local and national economy. I found a very interesting article written by a gentleman by the name of Robert Bradley, who is the author of Capitalism at Work, Business, Governments, and Energy. And he entitled this article, 15 Things to Despise About Government Regulations. And in the interest of time, I will mention only a few without really expanding on each one. So he says, laws and regulations may institutionalize the tragedy of the commons, the rule of capture, which stated that oil belonged to whomever pumped it out of the ground. And related regulations led petroleum companies to drill as many wells as possible in order to get the oil before their competitors could. By encouraging companies to drill otherwise unnecessary wells, the rule led to wasted resources and sometimes reservoir damage. Special interests lobby the government to get their products or services mandated by regulation. Regulations can create or destroy entire industries overnight. The use of such power adds uncertainty and risk to the market. If risk reaches unacceptable levels, investors put their money elsewhere. The concentration of political power in Washington forces companies to lobby Congress and the White House for protection against its arbitrary use. Corporate lobbying, in turn, increases people's distrust in the system. I thought that was really good. Lobbyists may support regulations and as a way of hurting others. Public officials are self-interested. Really? Is that true? Public officials are self-interested, and their self-interest may not always be in the public best interest. For instance, managers with the federal government are often paid in proportion to the number of people that report to them. Their incentive, therefore, is to increase the size of their departments. All too often, they act in accordance with this incentive regardless of the cost to us, the taxpayers. Laws and regulations stifle innovation, as you mentioned, Jill. Once a particular solution is written into law, there is very little incentive for companies to develop a better one. Does that make sense? And then national regulations can create national problems. In 1978, the Carter administration mistakenly convinced that the country was running out of oil and natural gas, passed the Power Plant and Industrial Fuel Use Act. Under that act, existing plants were prohibited from increasing their use of natural gas, and new plants were prohibited from using either their natural gas or fuel oil. The restriction left coal as the only alternative, despite the fact that coal emits more pollution in CO2 than natural gas does. And it says in parentheses, while nuclear power was also an alternative, the 3 Mile Island incident, which occurred the following year, made the option politically impossible. And it was President Reagan who lifted the restrictions on existing plants in 1981 and on new plants in 1987. So what do regulations do for people? These are all bad regulations. We do understand that there is room for good regulation in law. But the kinds of regulations that we're talking about here are the ones that hurt businesses, that stifle innovation and creativity in business owners, the engine of our economy. So again, we need to get rid of the government, the present government, which is in love with creating regulations.